Genesis 41. And how does that relate to what's coming? Stay tuned to find out. Hello, welcome to the Wealth Transfer. My name is Terry Saka, and I want to explain for those real quick that do not know about the Wealth Transfer. The Wealth Transfer is, as the Bible would say, information or designed to deliver information, because the wealth of the wicked is piled up for, well, as Job would say in 27, the innocent, which I would say us, is the Christian kingdom. And so the Wealth Transfer is here just to point you with information and data. It's not really me, folks, that's saying this. It's the data. And it's data that is helping us see a macro picture of the world that our financial institutions don't want you to know. They are micromanaging us as a culture, you could say, with the stocks and the bonds and the money flow and the credit cards and expenditures. And then, of course, throw in all of the entertainment devices to keep us distracted. But in the end, we have blown out this latest fiat cycle, and I believe we're entering into what we call almost a parabolic phase. Without getting technical, parabolic, it really just means like a blow-off. And when you look at what's been done over the last, about 7 years or so, since the 2008, we have printed literally 15 trillion in new currencies, 150 trillion in new debt. And I still think we might have some way to go, but we are parabolic in nature. It's just the macro versus a micro picture, meaning the larger versus the smaller lens, you could say. And so we, the people, we have a tendency, as we all are, families and jobs and life, we are micromanaging our input of information, and we don't get to see a real macro picture, a bigger picture of what's going on in the world. So I want to go right into what I would call the American finances. But before I do, along with just the wealth transfer itself, the idea of the piles of money, not even really money, I think the wealth of the wicked is everything from the wisdom and understanding and how to maneuver and how to protect and preserve, let alone store up the right assets for it. It all really started because this whole concept, people are like, well, you know, when it comes to the news and information, it's so fluid and you can talk about this, but I don't really see that. Well, the data speaks for itself. I'm merely just here to present the data. They could stall 6 months here, 9 months there, but that's not the point here, folks. This is a timeline issue of protecting and preserving the kingdom's wealth and assets. And Cornerstone itself, I know, and wealthtransferministries.org all started with a dream. And I personally was already in the financial world, but I had a dream 2 nights in a row. And in the dream, God specifically was telling me, repent of your wicked way, come back to me, and I'll heal your land. And if you don't, the flames bursted. I didn't know at the time that that actually was a scripture, but it was a direct message of get the people ready for what is to come. And so what I realize is the data itself is to show you at least the picture of the world. And in the context of Joseph in Genesis 41, prepare, protect, and preserve, store the right asset for the time that is to come. Remember Proverbs 11:1 and probably, I believe, 3 other scriptures. I remember him saying, dishonest weight and measure is an abomination. Honest skills are a delight. And I know, especially from precious metals point of view, 31.1 grams is about as honest scale as you can get. And yet the fiat currencies, which we've been in for 40 plus years, is the most dishonest weight and measure there is. So I really do believe from a kingdom's point of view, we will always be better off in the assets established by not just the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Congress has a right to coin money. Money was defined as grains of silver. But also the biblical sources of money. Biblical meaning silver always was the way to do business in grains of silver. And that is, of course, what our dollar is. So I believe if we've been given dominion over things of the earth, now remember, earth and world are two different places, right? Earth are things of the earth, the foods, the gold, the silver, the cotton. If we would have taken dominion over these, where would we be today? That's right, we'd be leading the world, if anything, with the wealth. Do not partake in a dishonest weight and measure. That's in the fiat world, in the currency world. So I really do believe, I'm going to go into the data here today just to let you see the bigger picture of what's taking place. And keep in mind, Genesis 41, and read that for yourself and pray, because a proper protection and hedge and diversification away from the market system is going to be your biggest reward in the end. And I know the hype is there about the stock market. They talk about it in the mainstream that the cash is all in, everyone is all in, and then currently right now, the stock market is 10% down from the high. And if you actually saw the data, you would realize it's in a place of, let's just say, a resistance and an extreme resistance at the top end. So, okay, for those that were in the markets, I understand, but why are we going to, as a people, continue to chase a market that may have a 10% upside, let's say even 20? When that downside comes in, the opportunity for those in the physical, tangible world, as we showed in a couple previous programs in commodities, money, liquidity is flowing out of equities to commodities. Silver, the reason I love it so much beyond the constitutional and biblical aspect is that silver is at the lowest point of the cycle, which from here just to the high returns 180%. And to me, that's a tremendous wealth transfer for those out of the fiat into the physical. So keep those in mind, and I would pray and have a proper allocation of your retirement asset protected in tangible assets. If you want to continue to be in the market, I understand. If you want to dabble in other things with small amounts of money like cryptos, I'm going to get into that's a trap of the New World Order. But if anything, take a portion that you pray for and protect it in a tangible asset for what is to come. Because Genesis 41 is about as apparent as it can get. Because when you see the data and you see what it stacks against, especially the means revision on the market system, folks, do you have 10 years, maybe more, to recover from a 50-60% stock market drop? Now, it's not about fear, and I want to put that to rest here before we get deep in this data. Fear is not what we are operating on here. There's so much we can go into. Romans 8:1, therefore, there's no condemnation for those, in Christ Jesus walk according to the Spirit, not of the flesh. It's about being in the channel of understanding with the wisdom. So there's no fear. I don't have to give you spirit of fear, right? But of power, dunamis, love, and a sound mind. Sound mind to take data and reason, to be diversified properly in our finances in America for what is in front of us is absolutely essential. And I believe one way we can do that, of course, is in the tangible world. And the reason silver I like mainly is because it's the most liquid investment that you can hold. Gold is good too, but gold is tier 1. There's other factors there. Land is fantastic too. It's of the earth, but land is not always liquid. And you really don't want to store up gasoline or cotton or corn or soy. Now, not talking to the farmer clients, and Coach, if you're watching, I love you. But it's really about, the farmers will tell you, they'll store up that grain. They actually are the closest to what God gave us dominion over, things of the earth. And as the Bible describes that Lucifer, Satan, is God of the world, folks, that's the systems of defined in the Bible. That's our finances, fake fiat currency world, stocks and bonds, entertainment and such. So I'm going to get directly into the data. Before I do, I got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Terrorism, a volatile stock market, rising food costs, natural disasters. Every day our economy is at risk, but your assets should not be. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our accredited asset management specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 or register online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com today. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. Representatives at Cornerstone did want me to mention that operators are standing by right now. If you did want to call and talk to some of them, they wanted to wrap it up and be available during the program hours. So please give them a call if you have any direct questions about being educated. Education is paramount in this time, and I think having data and talking to people that have kind of a pulse going on the macro is a good idea. So let's go right into the financial data. America finances. Now, this image is stark and should really get your attention as we show the data put into perspective what it is your objective is going to be for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And as you see the American financial or the currency system we have today going into this parabolic bubble, an epic expansion beyond anything else, you know gravity has a rating, a time and a place. And so we want to outline all of these to help you see that. Now, it doesn't really matter to me as far as the presidents and the era that they did do this in, but as you see, the red represents our debt. The green is our revenue, and then, of course, the gold and yellow is our deficit. Currently, we're running close to $1 trillion a year deficit, and with the tax cut that we just received, yes, that's fantastic for we the people. Yes, it's fantastic for repatriating money back to the United States. Yes, it's effective for bringing manufacturing jobs back into the United States, for bringing after you have manufacturing, then you have tangible benefits from those resources then feeding the other businesses. So can it expand the economy? Yes. Is it designed to expand the economy? Absolutely. I really believe it kind of cycles what we call hot money back towards America, where foreign corporations will want to establish, let's just say, headquarters or manufacturing here. That tax cut was fantastic for that reason. Unfortunately, the tax cut, I believe, is a preparation to help us recover from what is coming. It is a tsunami of economic expansion that really the president can't stop even if he wanted to. So as you see in the American finances, yes, we're in extreme debt. As a matter of fact, President Obama actually stewarded over a 100% increase in debt. He inherited it from President Bush at about $9 trillion, and today it stands well over $20 trillion. And so with that magnificent expansion of the burdens to our children's children in debt, and somehow that was a great president, I'm kind of astonished at it. But right now, the tax cuts were designed to try to revigorate the flow of capital. Problem is, we are in too much debt. The revenues have increased. That's going to change radically. So right now, we stand at about $1 trillion in the hole from taxes to what we put out in mandatory and discretionary spending. What does all this mean to you? It means that the paper money that we're holding on, what it buys you is compromised, and compromised dramatically, because the debt does not equate to a solvent, strong nation in the future, and this is the reckoning that we see coming. So I want to just kind of go into the Treasury federal budget. And I know this seems, this is the government numbers. They got to play with them all the time. I want to be able to at least deliver numbers that will be something you can measure off of. And I need you as an audience in the kingdom to look at them whole and be careful of snapshotting. For instance, in the Treasury budget yearly in the billions, this is just another chart that kind of backs up what I was telling you about the deficit. And if you notice the long green blue there on the right, that is the 2008 crash where we went into massive deficits, of course, and then we have to recover back to where we were. Problem is, we've had 2 years running where we've actually gone back to massive negative numbers in the deficit, where we currently stand at near $1 trillion. Problem is, with tax cuts, we're going to have more of a deficit until the economy can generate such a revenue that the taxes offset the expansion. And this is the trick here. So it will increase our deficit, and I believe that's why they want to raise the interest rates, because then they could turn around and lower them during the market crash. So you can look at it through the lens of the New York Stock Exchange. Investor credit and capital money flow is what we do in the Western Keynesian economic model here in the United States and Europe and the West. Look at this chart from the color point. Red and green along the median line there. Red is when we've gone into massive debt, margin debt into the stock market system, bond market system, debt and loans in small businesses and investments. But look at the staggering amount of debt accumulated since around the 2011 or 12, and look where we are today. That red mountain of debt is the worst in margin we've ever been, and I contend that it is because the interest rates have been so low and smart business people took loans out for nothing to expand. Problem is, they're in the stock market, and being in the stock market with this much debt means you have a leverage. You have a margin call. This 10% stock market correction we're in right now is nothing compared to what's coming, and I'm going to show some data so you don't have to just take my word for that. Now, the blue line itself is the S&P 500 in the monthly close. So if you notice, since the 2008 at the bottom of the right, straight up to the top in the blue line, that's the massive expansion of the stock market in comparison to, you notice the red in the debt. That's right, folks. A big part of this stock market move is financed, leveraged margin capital, printed up on digits in the cosmos from a bank, margined into the market system. And they're corralling we, the people, into this market, and you're doing it chasing what numbers? You chased 40% since the election, and what is it, 10, 20 more in a percentage increase to the markets? I'm just not sure, but there's that matrix there. How much are we chasing to the top versus the potential harm to the downside? And if you've noticed, we really only had a couple times where we were more in a positive, holding onto cash credit situation. And of course, that was right after the stock market crash. Everybody started grabbing on and holding on. It's very interesting, but if you'll go through, you'll see that the reds on the bottom have very specific times of correction. The first one in the middle in 2000 was the tech bubble that blew. The next one was the June 2007-2008 bubble that we call the Great Recession, folks. And this is what I want you to grab. Look at how little we were in credit and margin in 2008, and yet we had what they called a Great Recession. And look at that mountain now. When this market sells off 20, 30% and the cattle start running for the door, we're going to have a big problem because the margin and leverage has to be neutral, and the panic sets in. That's why I believe we're looking at a 50 to 60% correction in the future, and you just have to look at the amount of debt that's behind it. So I got to take a quick break, and before we get back into their data, let's do that right now. We'll be right back.
Terrorism, a volatile stock market, rising food costs, natural disasters. Every day our economy is at risk, but your assets should not be. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our accredited asset management specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 or register online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com today. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. So finishing off with this chart, it is the investor credit and the market. Now, the red is something I want you to really hold on to, because think of it as a force of energy, as a 40-foot wave. That's why I use the word tsunami. Tsunami being this massive energy force of water that then comes into land. And I believe that red right there is absolutely energy, because it's all credit, margin, and leverage. It's who's the smartest cattle to get through the narrow gate before it happens. Narrow is the path that leads to life, and only a few find it, right? So keep that in perspective as the motivator, the driver, because in the preservation and protection of our assets, the most important thing we could do, if we think of Genesis 41, which I believe this is the time we're in. We have a colleague that, actually not a colleague, it was just a member of our church we used to go to. He's in the same position, he believes, as a Joseph position of preparation, but he's all in food. And he deals with cattle and food product, which I think is just as essential and exceptional and something to go into. As far as, we need to eat, we need electricity, and it's our assets, our wealth that is here not only for our standard of living, but to continue the mission that God has set before us, but for the inheritance to our children, children's children. So it's all about money. It's all in the Keynesian economics, it's about credit, expansion, and money, period. Keynesian is designed for you to take out loans, use credit cards, because Keynesian operates on an interest rate that they make off of you. Now think about it. A credit card on average is 26% interest when they're getting the money for like 2%. Think about that. We should never be living out those means, and yet we do as a people, and then yet our retirements sit entirely predominantly in the dishonest weight and measures of the world, stocks and bonds and such. So regardless of what the stock market's doing, silver as a tangible asset will dwarf the stock market gain since the election in probably 2 days. You will see that type of appreciation. It'll be incredible. But the true money supply year over year in this particular image I'm going to show you now goes all the way back to 2003 when we started coming off the 9/11 as we collapsed in money supply. And then, of course, that collapse led to the 2007-2008 market crash. Now, for those that do remember the 2008 market crash, go watch The Big Short if you haven't as a movie. It's pretty darn accurate as more of a documentary movie, but it's brilliant. It's because they had to pull credit out of the market system. Then they feed it, then pull it out. Being that we're infinitely more in debt today than we ever were, don't mind the employment numbers and all the inflation numbers, everything they're telling you. It's all fabricated. It's all out of 10 pieces to equal a truth. They give you 3. So there's a big difference in what you're seeing to be a truth. This is money supply year over year. And as you can see, from the peak of after 2008 and 2010 and 2011, we've been steadily decreasing money supply. and then it peaked again and then literally started collapsing. And we're walking right into now 2018 on the verge of being lower in available money supply for credit and for expansion of business than in the epic time of the Great Recession of 2008. Interesting, isn't it? And that's just money supply, folks. But if credit and liquidity dry up, that's going to starve that market. And that's why you're going to see this correction. The problem is, if you remember the last image I showed you, that last image had a mountain of debt that was credit card debt, you could say, margin debt, leverage debt. And think of that debt number as cattle, as I said, going through the gate. Who's going to get through first? And you're backed up because recall, not just 1-2 years ago, I believe, the law went into effect. You can no longer set a stop loss in your stock market position, an automatic sell. You can't do that. You now have to call your broker, and good luck if there's 200-300 of them, right? Now, this is the big one on money supply. I want you to see the waves, and this is a nice chart pattern that you can use if you were to analyze charting. The big gray areas, the shade areas, are that of recessions, but you notice the dips, the dips and curves and the circles of money supply. The last time we had the breakdown of the money supply, as I just showed you, was 2008, correct? And then we went up and expanded, and look where we're at today. That arrow on the far right, that is where we're landing, and that's what I call the Federal Reserve crisis. Talk about a credit crunch. Matter of fact, let me do this. Let me show you an even closer view of this. This image is that chart on the right where we are today. The big bar is the 2008 recession. As you can see, credit dried up because the trouble was coming. And then you notice we've expanded, and on the indicators of technicals, we are going right back into the zero-sum game of credit, which means if there's that many cattle coming through the gate, credit's drying up. Folks, I can't make up the data. The data is telling us we better store up and be ready. There is something about a proper protection and preservation. There's something about storing up. And I just merely want to say, storing up is a very personal decision. We all have different circumstances with children and families and businesses. So storing up is storing up of all provisions, whether they be food, whether they be equipment, capital, but to protect our assets so we can have the standard of living and the inheritance to the children's children here in the future. When you start seeing this data stack up and it's showing you an epic accumulation of debt, that debt is going to go through that channel door. It's just who's going to get through first. And folks, the markets could crash 50, 60%. I would not be surprised. So have a God-blessed week, and until next time.